Good morning to everyone. In the last class we already discussed about the general introduction about the parenterals and what are the requirements for the parenteral preparation. Like that we discussed something about this parenteral, and now this is the general requirements, and after that various routes of administration, how you can administer a parenteral dosage form into the patient's body. We can administer in various routes of parent administration here. And after that next one is advantages and then disadvantages. So these two are also completed. Next, this is the classification of the parenterals. Normally the parenteral formulations are classified into two categories. First one, small volume parenterals, and second one, large volume parenterals. So first we have to know what is the small volume parenteral. See here, an injection that is packed in containers labeled as containing 100 ml or less. So a normal injection which is given through the parenteral form, and here the dose of the depends on its dose. The parenterals are divided into two classes. First one, that is 100 ml or less than 100 ml. So if the formulation is having the volume of the dose that is 100 ml or less than 100 ml, then we can say that it is comes under the small volume parenterals. And next, after that, large volume parenterals. Here also if you see the volume of the product, that is in between 101 to 1000 ml. So more than 100 ml will comes under the large volume parenterals, and within 100 ml it will comes under the small volume parenterals. And some of the differences are there. I will show you. Yeah, see here, these are the common differences between the small volume parenterals and the large volume parenterals. Depends on various criteria like its volume. First one, volume. If you see the volume in the small volume parenterals, the volume is 100 ml or within 100 ml, then we can consider that product comes under the small volume parenteral. And second one is a large volume parenteral. If you see this one, the volume of the parenteral is more than 100 ml and up to 1000 ml. Like infusions, saline are there, those saline are comes under the large volume parenteral. And next one, its routes. So if it is the small volume parenteral, we can administer the drug by these ways: intravenous, intramuscular and subcutaneous. And coming to the large volume parenterals, we can introduce the drug in the way that is either intravenous and non-intravenous. Anyway we can use the large volume parenterals. And then preservative. If you see the preservative, if it is a small volume parenterals, the addition of the preservative is mandatory, but coming to the large volume parenterals, not used. Not used means no need of the preservatives in the case of large volume parenterals, because in this small volume parenterals maximum we are used for the therapeutic purpose, to treat some disease or to treat some infection like that. For the medicinal use we are using the small volume parenteral, but coming to the large volume parenterals may not be medicinal. Maximum large volume parenterals are used for introducing either nutrient supplements or salts into the patient's body. In somewhat seriously ill patients we are using this one. So that's why maybe used therapeutic or maximum used for the nutritional purpose only. So here, even though we are not adding the preservative, it is okay, no need of the preservative. And next one is buffers. Coming to buffers, in the small volume parenterals definitely there is a requirement for the addition of the buffer, and coming to the large volume parenterals, not used. So no need to maintain the pH in the case of large volume parenteral, but here buffers are mandatory to maintain the pH of the dosage form. And next one, formulation. Yeah, the injections are available either in the form of solution, emulsions and suspension. Yeah, I already said to you that the large volume parenterals means either a solutions or sometimes nutrients or sometimes emulsions in the form of oil in water emulsion also we can use. And next one, isotonicity. That is in the case of small volume parenterals, no need to maintain that isotonicity, but coming to the large volume parenterals, maintenance of the isotonicity is mandatory. And pyrogenicity, In the case of small volume parenterals, not as essential, but in the large volume parenterals, it is mandatory. And next one, uses. Yeah, these small volume parenterals are mostly used for therapeutic and diagnostic purpose. But coming to large volume parenterals, we can use either for the nutritional supplement, detoxification, and during surgeries also we are using the large volume parenterals. Yeah, as we discussed previously, that is small volume parenterals definitely it is for the medicinal purpose. So some drug will be injected through the small volume parenteral. But coming to the large volume parenterals, not always the drugs. Maximum times we are introducing the nutritional supplements only. Sometimes along with the nutritional supplement, directly we can give the therapeutic ingredient to the large volume parenterals only. Instead of injecting into the patient body, to the large volume parenteral only the drug can be injected. So through that way the drug also can be entered into the patient's body along with the nutritional supplement. So these are the common differences between the small volume parenteral and the large volume parenteral. And next one is its formulation. Yeah, if you see the formulation of the parenteral products, parenteral, here it is the liquid dosage form. So liquid dosage form means the most important ingredient, major portion of the dosage form is vehicle. Vehicle means nothing but a solvent. Some liquid vehicle will be used in the preparation of the parenteral product. So coming to that vehicles, the vehicles here used in the parenterals are classified into two ways. First one, aqueous vehicle, second one, non-aqueous vehicle. Okay, so two types of vehicles, both aqueous and non-aqueous also we can use in the formulation of parenteral. If you see the aqueous vehicle, first we will discuss about the aqueous vehicles. Here number of vehicles are there. See here, first one, water for injection, and second one, bacteriostatic water for injection, and third one, sterile water for injection, and next one, water miscible vehicles. All these we can use in the preparation of parenteral dosage form. So see the first one, water for injection. What is water for injection here? Highly purified water used as the vehicle for injective preparations which will be subsequently sterilized. And after that, USP requirement include not more than 10 parts per million, so 10 ppm. If you see the aqueous vehicle, under the aqueous vehicle number of things are there. First one, water for injection. How they are classified into water for injection, sterile water or distilled water, like that, that is depends on the particular limitation for the foreign particles. Foreign particles means sometimes some particulate matter may be present in the vehicle even though after sterilization, after distillation also some contamination we can observe. Maybe we can't observe visually, but it is having such a contamination. So that is, in this water for injection, the contamination, for that contamination there is a limitation, that is 10 ppm. And next one, pH of the water for injection should be in the range of 5 to 7, and water for injection may be prepared either by distillation or reverse osmosis. So this water for injection is prepared by the method that is distillation. So water for injection means nothing but distilled water. That distilled water can be used in the making of the parenteral dosage form. And where it can be stored? It should be stored in a chemically resistant containers. For example, if you are using any iron container or lead container, sometimes the contamination occurs in the water because of the leaching substances or leached chemicals of the stored container. If you are using any iron, lead, some metal, so instead of using that metal container, better to use some plastic containers to avoid that chemical resistance. And next one, yeah, after the water for injection, the next category is bacteriostatic water for injection. So same water for injection only, as we discussed previously, the same water here also used, but there is a modification, that is including a bacteriostatic agent. See here, water used for making parenteral solutions prepared under aseptic conditions and not terminally sterilized need to meet the USP sterility test. It can contain an added bacteriostatic agent. when in containers of 30 ml or less. So same water for injection what we discussed in the first criteria, that one only used here also, but what is the limitation here? Modification is addition of the bacteriostatic agent. For example, like benzyl alcohol. Benzyl alcohol is a good bacteriostatic agent used in the making of parenteral formulation. Okay, so this is about bacteriostatic water for injection. And third one is the sterile water for injection. Sterile water for injection containing one or more suitable bacteriostatic agent. In the first one, bacteriostatic water, there only one ingredient we are including, that is to suppress the growth of the bacteria and other contaminating microorganisms. But here in the sterile water for injection, we can use one or two bacteriostatic agents, and they are permitted to contain higher levels of solid than water for injection. Previously we discussed, see the water for injection, yeah, in the water for injection what is the limitation for the solid content? That is 10 ppm. But coming to sterile water for injection, here the limitation for the solid content is greater than, higher than the water for injection. In the water for injection the content is should be less than 10%. So even though more than the 10%, that is acceptable in the case of sterile water for injection. And this is used for washing wounds, surgical incisions or body tissues. So actually we are discussing all these things under the vehicle of the parenteral preparation. Apart from that preparation of the parenteral, we can also use this sterile water for washing of wounds in minor injuries and also surgical incisions and body tissues. So in the minor injuries, during minor injuries and normal surgeries, we can use the tissues by using this sterile water, apart from the making of parenteral preparation. And next one is water miscible vehicles. So water miscible vehicle, up to now we discussed about aqueous vehicle, and the next one is the non-aqueous vehicle, and in between that there is another category, that is water miscible vehicle. So the number of solvents that are miscible with water has been used as the portion of a vehicle. Along not a water, along with the water we can also add some other solvent like ethyl alcohol or liquid propylene glycol or glycerin, like that. Remaining solvents which can be solubilized or which can be miscible with the water, we can include as the vehicle. So that is water miscible vehicles. Nothing is there here, just a solvent which is easily miscible with the water. So the combination, a mixture of water plus alcohol or a mixture of water plus glycerin, like that we can use in the preparation of the parenterals. Now this is the second criteria category, that is non-aqueous vehicles. Non-aqueous vehicles, so here oily substances like fixed oils which are obtained from both vegetable origin, liquid origin and also free fatty acids, yeah, anything we can use, like under this vegetable oils we can use either peanut oil, corn oil or cottonseed oil or sesame oil, soybean oil, ethyl oleate, isopropyl myristate. So these are the examples for the non-aqueous vehicles. Among these, any one can be used in the making of the parenteral formulation. After that, so up to now we discussed about the only the vehicle portion, because in the making of the parenteral formulation the vehicle is the most important important ingredient. Why? Because the maximum volume will be occupied by the vehicle portion only. Maximum portion is the vehicle. So various types of vehicles what we can use in the making of parenteral formulation we discussed, like aqueous vehicle and non-aqueous vehicle. Under the aqueous vehicle, different ingredients like water for injection, sterile water for injection or water miscible vehicles, like that we discussed number of vehicles. Now these are the other additives apart from the vehicle. only the vehicle, only with the vehicle and the drug we can't make the dosage form. Other number of excipients need to add in the preparation of any dosage form, not only the parenteral. So in this case of parenterals, these are the remaining ingredients are to be included to make the parenteral formulation. So what are the ingredients means here? First one is antibacterial agents. I already discussed about this antibacterial agent in the preparation of the bacteriostatic water. So what are the antibacterial agents can be used and why it is used? See here, these are added in multiple dose containers to prevent microorganisms growth, and limited concentrations of the agents are used. Yeah. So bacteriostatic agent. Bacteriostatic means nothing but it depresses the or suppress the growth of the microorganisms and the other bacteria. So these are used mainly to suppress the growth of bacteria in the formulation, either during the storage, during manufacturing, until used by the consumer. The product should be stable without any degradation. So to maintain that stability of the product by including these bacteriostatic agents. And what are the bacteriostatic agents generally used in the making of parenteral formulation? Here some examples are given. Phenyl mercuric nitrate and thiomersal 0.01% can be used. And in the same way, benzethonium chloride and benzalkonium combination also can be included. And also we can use phenol and cresol, that is within the range of 0.05%, and chlorambutanol in the percentage of 0.05%. Actually here some examples are given along with their percentages. What is the meaning of percentage here? Within that range only we should add it into the formulation. Should not cross over this range. For example, chlorambutanol, here the limitation range for addition into the parenteral, that is only 0.05%. Within this percentage only we should include it into the formulation, not over this limit. Not more than 0.05% should not be included in the making of the parenteral dosage form. So these are some of the examples of the bacteriostatic agents. And why we are using the bacteriostatic agents? We are used to suppress the growth of the bacteria and other microorganisms in the formulation during the storage. Until used by the consumer, the product should be stable. So to maintain that stability of the product, we are using bacteriostatic agents. And next category is buffers. Generally, buffer is used to resist the change in the pH of the product upon addition of an acid or base. So to maintain the stable pH, generally the drugs may be degraded or some change will be occur when there is a changes in the pH of the product. Because maximum of all the drugs are chemical in nature, chemicals only. So is there any changes in the pH, it leads to the degradation of the drug within a particular pH levels. So even the addition of that acid or base, the product should not degraded at a particular pH. So to maintain that resistance or to maintain that stability, we need to use these buffers. See here why they are adding into the formulation, given is a sentence, that is added to maintain pH and to stabilize the solution. Maintain the pH and to stabilize the solution from chemical degradation. Yes, what we discussed now, the same thing is given here, to prevent from the or to avoid the chemical degradation of the drug. After the manufacturing, the product will be stored for a particular period of time. So during that storage, if there is any changes in the pH of the product, it leads to the changes in the drug nature also. Some other chemical reactions will be takes place. So degradation of the product occurs. To avoid that degradation, there is a need to add these buffers. So what are the common examples generally used in the making of a parenteral formulation? They are given here. Citrate and acetate buffer, sodium benzoate and benzoic acid buffer, sodium tartarate and tartaric acid buffer, and phosphate buffer. These are most commonly used examples of the buffers in the parenteral formulation. What are the examples? Citrate and acetate buffer, sodium benzoate and benzoic acid, sodium tartarate and tartaric acid, and phosphate buffer. Next one is antioxidants. What is the purpose of antioxidants? Antioxidants are used in the formulation to prevent the oxidation. Oxidation can be prevented by the addition of these antioxidant agents. After the manufacturing, due to the atmospheric oxygen or within the product, if there is any releasing of oxygen or oxygen free radicals, then it leads to occur oxidation reaction. If there is any reaction taking place in the product, means it is a sign of degradation, either hydrolysis or oxidation, anything happened in the product means it leads to some degradation of the drug. So to avoid all such conditions, we are including this oxidating, not hypoxidant, antioxidant agents. So what are the examples? Two types of antioxidants generally we are using. Among these, first one is reducing agents. Next one, blocking agents. Reducing agents means if oxygen is liberated, immediately it leads to oxidation. So to avoid that process of oxidation, the liberated oxygen will be taken up by some hydrogen molecule, means reduction. So reducing agents like ascorbic acid or sodium bisulfite or thiourea, when you are including these ingredients, these are used for reduction. So when there is a liberation of oxygen, immediately this reduction will take place and automatically there is a both the reactions takes place at a time, it comes to the stable state. So to avoid that oxidation, we are including some reducing agents like ascorbic acid or sodium bisulfite or thiourea. And next one is blocking agents. Blocking means it occupy the space where there is a chances of oxidation. Sometimes in the chemical structure we can see some sites. In that site maybe the molecular oxygen will come and occupy and oxidation will occur. So to avoid that occupancy of the oxygen molecule at a particular site, before that only if we are using these blocking agents, the tocopherol, for example tocopherol is given here. These substances will occupy the particular space where there is a chances of the occupancy by the oxygen and leads to oxidation. So before that only when you are using these blocking agents, it will block the site, then we can avoid the process of oxidation. Okay, so these are the common ingredients generally used in the making of a parenteral formulation. Once I will revise what we are discussed. First one is a vehicle, and in the vehicle we have two types of the vehicles, aqueous vehicle and non-aqueous vehicle also. Under that aqueous vehicles, number of examples we discussed like water for injection, sterile water for injection or bacteriostatic water, and water miscible vehicles, number of vehicles we discussed. And coming to the non-aqueous vehicle, different types of oils which are obtained from the plant origin and some vegetable origin, that is comes under the non-aqueous vehicle. And after that, apart from the vehicle, what are the other ingredients need to include here? First one, antioxidants, next one buffers, and next one antibacterial agents. Not only these three, other ingredients are also there like chelating agents and some other examples, some other categories are there. We will discuss about all the remaining things in the next class.